Good evening, sister. I'd like you to welcome you to this section on digitalisation in the changing world of work. My name is Sarah Cumming and I am a board member of the Scottish Women's Convention, affectionately known as SWC. The SWC is funded by the Scottish Government to consult with women in communities throughout Scotland and to use their voices to influence public policy. This is a unique funding position as no other women's organisation in the UK is funded this way. We are delighted to be bringing women's voices to CSW, ensuring that issues concerning and ideas raised are discussed around the world, and the priority theme of women's economic empowerment in the changing world of work. Women in Scotland have a lot to say, from work which women undertake through childcare and caring, to occupational segregation and gender streaming, all important factors which impact on a woman's ability to be empowered in the workplace. Women in communities throughout the world need to have their voices heard, and decision makers need to listen, whether at local, national or international level. The speakers tonight are all from different backgrounds and communities. They will bring their own unique perspective to the digitalisation discussions. We have another speaker coming, and unfortunately she's been caught up in the celebratory traffic today for St Patrick's Day. Our first speaker today, I am delighted to announce Peril Sawyer. Peril is a labour activist, a union negotiator and an advocate for Canadian workers. She is regarded as a leader in her advocacy for gender equality in employment and wages, occupational health and safety, including ending workplace violence and women's workers' compensation. She well understands the issues and concerns of women in the quickly evolving world of work. Peril, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's great to be here this evening, and as I understand it, this is the first CSW side parallel event that the Scottish Women's Convention is conducting. So congratulations on that. I think that's terrific. And thank you for inviting me to be with you tonight. So I get to speak about tonight a paper that was developed by Uni Global Union on the digitalization of work and the effect on gender. A little bit about Uni is Uni represents about 20 million workers globally and over 10 million women, and from over 150 nations and 900 trade unions in the fastest growing sectors in our economy in the world, which covers areas of skills and services. Uni is based in Lyon, Switzerland. I'll be reviewing a paper that was developed by Uni's Equal Opportunities Department, highlighting the issues of digitalization and the effect on women workers. I've passed out a PowerPoint presentation for you to follow as I speak. I hope that will make it a little easier. So if you turn in one page just to bring a little bit of an icebreaker, let's start with a little humor on the impact of digitalization, technology, and robotics in the future world of work. So if you go to the second page, you'll see a couple of things of what we... Oh, you don't have a copy of the presentation. Can you get a couple of copies up here? There we go. Thank you. So there's an idea of what, in the not too distant future, things will look like. I have to say the Labor Day barbecue one really got my interest when I saw, try one of these. They're salty and they come with 9 new human skills. I just had a question. Is this being live streamed now on Facebook?
Yeah.
Were you able to upload the PowerPoint presentation?
They're uploading at present.
Okay. So for anybody who's watching external to this meeting, there is a PowerPoint presentation that will be uploaded on the Scottish Women's Convention Facebook page that will help you as well in following along as we talk this evening. So the question is, what is digitalization? Digitalization is the development and use of digital technologies and artificial intelligence to change a business model and provide new revenues and value-producing opportunities. It is a process of moving to a digital world, including e-government, e-health, and e-services. On the next slide, you can see some examples of the way digitalization and technology are currently impacting our lives, including paying bills online without the need to go to the bank or write a check. Robotic arms performing surgeries, buying groceries over the internet, or using scanners to scan products without having to go through a cashier at the supermarket. But this is just the beginning. So if you look at these pictures, you'll see, the one that really captured me is a few of them, and I'll talk about them this evening. And one is on, in healthcare, and actually robotics performing surgery. And that's happening now, and it's going to be increasing over time. And if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that's actually a 3D printer building a building. So it's pretty amazing what technology has to offer, but there's an effect because of that. On the next slide, I wanted to just tell you a little story. My husband, when I was preparing for this presentation a couple of weeks ago, my husband was telling me that our water meter at home was replaced. And he said what the technician told him is they were replacing them all in the neighborhood, and likely the province of Ontario, where I come from. But it's now got a Bluetooth chip in it. So the water meter reader, the person, would normally have to walk up your driveway, go and read the meter and document it and whatever. But now they just have to drive by. And the Bluetooth picks up the reading from the water meter. So because I was working on this presentation, I thought about it. Well, that's very convenient, or we'll look at that as being convenient for the person who's, collecting that information. What's the effect on jobs? How many people lost work as a result of that? And then the other part of it is, because it's new technology, did it actually create some jobs? So it's both sides that, we need to look at. And so I just thought that was interesting. It's happening right under our noses, and we don't even realize it in many cases about what's happening, really on the planet in the area of digitalization. But in the next years, we will see driverless cars, robots taking over healthcare and cleaning services, artificial intelligence taking over complex thinking processes, and 3D printing that will enable us to build affordable homes, to name a few. And recently on Huffington Post, it's an online newspaper, I was just reading that they've actually built the first 3D house in Russia. It's using cement as the thing for building the house, the 3D printing. And the house is about 38 square meters or 409 square feet. The home cost $10,134 US to build. And the windows and doors were the largest part of the expense of that at about $3,600. So it's pretty amazing that they are already started. And anyone here in the room, have you heard of Amazon Go? Seeing some nods. For the benefit of those that haven't heard of Amazon Go, in December last year, Amazon announced a new grocery store they were opening in Seattle. They're beta testing it with their staff in Seattle. And it's an 1,800 square foot selling space. But what it has the world's most advanced shopping technology. There's no lineups. There's no checkouts. You just grab and go. So they're calling it just walk out shopping experience. You can use, what you do is you use your Amazon Go app to enter the store. You take the products that you want. You can put them in your purse or in a bag or in a cart. And if you change your mind, you can take it out. And the technology that's built into the actual space can determine if you're putting things in or taking them out. And the bottom line is, when you're done picking out what you want, you leave the store. No checkouts, no cashiers, no lineups. The biggest worry for me, given the union I'm with, United Food and Commercial Workers, is there's no cashiers. But shortly after you leave the store, you then, Amazon charges your accountant, takes up the cost of what you've purchased. So as I said, this is being beta tested now in Seattle, Washington, in the U.S., and with the employees of of Amazon, and but it's going to be opening to the public this spring. That's how fast this is happening, and really, it's the technology that Amazon has developed, and if other retailers out there pick that up in some way, if they connect with Amazon, you'll quickly see cashiers disappearing in terms of their work. Now, if you go to the next slide, really, I'm going to keep this simple. It looks a little complicated. But what this is to give you a better idea of how fast things are changing. Take a look at this graph. It shows both world population and the social development index since 2000 BC. As you can see, humanity has had a very steady, constant upward trajectory along the bottom line there. Just follow that along. And the curve increases significantly, though, around 1800 near the far right. But when we entered the new millennium, particularly the last decade, the change was so profound that we almost have a 90-degree trajectory upwards. I'm lost here. Sorry about that. So, and in particular, the last decade, the change has been so profound. This is what's been known and called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or the Second Machine Age. And it shows the immense impact and the development of new technologies and what has had the effect on humankind. So the question is, how will these new technologies affect the world of work? Experts have divided this issue into 4 categories: job creation, job change, job displacement, and job shift. Job creation means the change in new sectors, new products, and new services. Job change refers to new forms of worker-machine interaction and new forms of jobs and employment. Job displacement is the eradication of jobs that can be digitalized, automatized, or robotized. Some of these jobs include secretarial and office jobs, sales positions in low or unskilled jobs in the postal, courier services, and storage sector, in the cleaning sector, and in the restaurant and catering industry as well. Job shift is when the development of digital platforms and crowd working impact the world of work. These new forms of work imply that workers from countries with high levels of social protections are brought into competition with those in countries of low levels of protection. These developments challenge the traditional and understanding of employment, working time and place, and companies. We're told that we are living in the first hour of the digital age. Because of the increased processor capacities, we've been able to harness more knowledge in the last decade than the 2,000 years prior. So studies estimate that 47% of people currently employed are in job categories amenable to computerization, particularly those that require routine measurements, operation, pattern recognition, or manipulation. This means that more than 5.1 million jobs will be lost to disruptive labor market changes, many of them in administrative and office jobs. And guess who's predominantly affected in these areas?
Women.
Right on. So the notion that digitalization is gender neutral, as if both men and women are affected equally by the impact of technology, is not true. And if you look at the next slide, this is the one that has all the red lines. This shows the top 20 jobs that are likely to disappear. And if you look down the list, a lot of those are predominantly women work in those fields. And the percentage on the side is the likelihood of the disappearance of those jobs. So let's take a closer look at how technology and digitalization will impact women. To do so, we've divided this premise into 5 statements, and we'll take a closer look at each one. So workers will be able to choose their location for work-life balance reasons and have more flexible working hours. Workers will need to invest further in training and lifelong learning. There will be a greater demand for some specific types of skills. There'll be a widening of technology gap, and we'll talk about further labor segregation. So let's start with the first point. Workers will be able to choose their location for work-life balance reasons and have more flexible working hours. This means that the future world of work will be characterized by its fluidity. People will be able to shift between employment forms of part-time, permanent, and platform work, etc. Often, but this fluidity or flexibility, they're calling it, will affect the genders differently. With flexible working time, men often invest more time in work. Women, by contrast, use their flexibility for activities and duties outside of work. The reason behind this premise is that most women still take on the bigger share of household responsibilities. So although women will have more time off from work, like, here's an example, A lot of women will no longer have to commute to work because they'll be working from home on different pieces of technology. And that's unless the household and family responsibilities are actually equally distributed, women will keep carrying the larger load. Also, the constant movement between work creates an additional surcharge of what is known as what's called overhead work. This refers to additional work changing jobs. The changing jobs implies like job searching, interviews, and job applications. And this will put an additional strain on women's times and responsibilities. Finally, the idea of the ideal worker will have more prevalence because we'll be connected 24/7, competing with people around the world for similar jobs. And the ideal worker, just so you know, is a worker who works full-time, has no duties outside of the workplace, and is therefore available for their employer's needs at any time. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know about too many people that can meet that criteria. But for women, this is particularly challenging since they are the ones that take care of most of the family and household duties. The flexibility of work will also be accompanied by an increasing need to educate, train, and build new skills and capacities to face the challenges of the new world of work. Unfortunately for women, this can also pose a challenge, as they can neither afford it due to either social, cultural, or economic barriers, or they cannot fit this need into their family duties or in their need to work. And education is considered an inevitable consequence of the digital revolution. The ideal worker norm will be stretched out further because full-time workers will not only have to comply with the employer's needs, but they will also need to constantly engage in further training. Since men have more time on their hands than women, this boils down to the parental and household responsibilities, if they're not being equally shared. So women will have less time on their hands to invest in training and lifelong learning, such as work norms. So this work norm would actually make the situation work for some women, depending on the fields that they're in. Lifelong learning and the development of technological skills will affect particularly older women as well, not because of their age, but because learning new things becomes more challenging. And things are changing so fast in the technological world. This also implies that if they are not engaged in lifelong learning, their chances of remaining employed diminishes drastically. There will be a greater demand for some specific types of skills, called STEM skills, which are careers in science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as digital skills. And they're the fastest growing skills in the labor market today. It is estimated that by 2020, for example, there will be 1.4 million computer jobs available in the U.S. But there are some facts that play against this, or against us. For example, in OECD countries, studies show that at age 15, fewer than 5% of girls consider careers in these areas. A quarter of startups have no plans to provide or promote diversity or inclusion, and 30% haven't even talked about it. Although 68% of college graduates in the U.S. are women, only 1/3 of them work in IT. Of the 13% of women in STEM careers or professions, only 10% of them occupy managerial positions. This is also known as the leaky pipeline. It's a metaphor for the way women disappear from STEM careers. There are various reasons for this, but the most common are a lack of inclusive policies for recruiting and flexible work, lack of role models, which creates a sense of isolation for women, family responsibilities, and also stereotypes that present these areas as male-dominated sectors and unappealing to women. On the widening of the technology gap in 2013, the gap between women and men's access to the internet was 200 million. By 2016, it is estimated to be 350 million. In Africa, or it has been estimated, not that it will be in 2017. In Africa, women are 50% less likely to use the internet than men. But in addition to ownership and access, lack of control over the use of technology can be an additional barrier for women. In Egypt and India, as an example, 12% of women did not access the internet more often because they did not think it was appropriate, and more than 8% did not access it because family and friends would disapprove. A Additionally, more than 1.7 billion women around the world do not own a mobile phone, even when 80% of the population in developing countries own one. A study from the World Bank predicts that if we double the pace at which women become frequent users of digital technology, the workplace could reach gender equality by 2040, and developed nations, and by 2060 in developing nations. With limited access to science and technology, women cannot access the power to change and modify their living conditions and environments, from economic opportunities like growing businesses and social enterprise to opportunity for greatly improving health outcomes, including sexual and reproductive health, energy, environment, and natural resources, resource management, and infrastructure development. And lastly, there's the issue of further labor segregation. By labor segregation or occupational segregation, we refer to those areas of work in which men tend to be concentrated in what is perceived as male occupations, like construction workers and forklift operators, and women and female ones like nurses, teachers, childcare workers. If we add to the existing issue the fact that digitalization will transform industries, disrupting current labor markets, the existing gender gaps will increase as some industries traditionally held by women becomes obsolete. As we observed in the previous slides, in the upcoming decades, 47% of jobs currently existing will be amenable to computerization. The problem lies with the type of jobs that will disappear. For example, sewing machine operators. If you look at in Bangladesh, 80% of the people working in the textile and garment industry are women. And for agricultural workers, 43% of the world's agricultural labor force in developing countries are women. Bank tellers and sales assistants, sales shop assistants will disappear as well. And for administrative assistants and file clerks, women represent in the U.S. alone, of the 4 million workers employed in this area, 96% are women. This all means that the impact of job cuts as a part of technology being implemented will have a direct impact on areas of work that are generally feminized, further impacting women. Besides all of the above mentioned issues, we also have to ask ourselves, why do we need women in technology? Well, if you look at the facts, you'll understand why. Half of the users of both technology and websites are women. Their choices impact up to 85% of purchasing decisions, and in countries like the United States, account for 4.3 trillion of the $5.9 trillion of consumer expenditures. That's 73%. This means that women are the single largest economic force in the world. Now think about that for a minute and what we can do with that to help make change for women. The participation in the ICT sectors, information, communication, and technology sectors, would raise European GDP by 9 billion euros. And their participation of women in the workforce provides more diverse workplace, but it also helps to drive creativity and innovative technology. So what can we do about this? Well, at Uni Equal Opportunities, we want to be prepared for what lies ahead. We know that it is daunting and sometimes a frightening scenario, but if we are ready, this challenge can become an excellent opportunity to grow and learn. And to be ready, we need a strategy, a plan. We need to be resourceful and we need to be prepared. Our strategy for the future consists of 4 pillars: awareness, inspiration, action, and support. By awareness, we refer to recognizing that the future world of work is not only a challenge that needs to be addressed, but an opportunity. To do so, we need to focus on carrying out activities like campaigns, discussion groups like this, and workshops in which women and affiliated unions can provide information on new technology that's impacting their lives. This will open the door for an exchange of information, tools, and resources that will help minimize the impact. Without women in leadership roles, without women at the negotiating table, without women in IT, without women in unions, we cannot voice our issues. The more we are, the louder our voices will be heard. The more we are, again, the louder our voices will be heard. Therefore, we need to inspire more women to join unions, to work with us, so that we can face these challenges together. Already, Danish trade unions are reaching out to universities and students at universities and working on campaigns to get more women into STEM careers. And also are talking about unions and the work that we do. We also have to look at new ways of organizing, as the workplace of the future will look significantly different in many professions than that of today. In addition, it's important to talk with high school students, as an example, about the future of work and encouraging young women, when making course selections, to consider courses that leave open the possibility of being in IT and STEM careers. Action is key to our work. To minimize the impact of technology, we need to work with governments, companies, and unions in creating, drafting, and implementing policies and regulations that will protect women in the future world of work. As unions, collective bargaining will be essential. I can tell you one of our national employers in Canada, in bargaining recently, we negotiated for the first time protections for workers that are part-time, because this is retail I'm talking, and there's a high percentage of part-time workers, people working part-time in retail. But for the first time, we were able to provide some job security for part-time workers, that in the event of work being contracted out, that those workers that would be affected will still maintain their jobs, and they'll be put into other departments. And we've been able to do that historically for full-time workers, but this was our first time that we were able to make that work for part-time. And finally, we need support, networks, members and femtors, lifelong education, and all of this will help women to rise to the challenges and embrace the changes. As unionists, you know, we're really good at this, and we need to use all of our tools. The first paper, this is the first paper that UNI's Equal Opportunities Department on Digitalization has developed and on the effect of gender. And it's intended to highlight the issue. It doesn't have all the solutions in it, but it's intended to just highlight the issues and bring people's attention to this and to be more aware. This fall, UNI will produce a further paper which is more geared to solutions. And we'll be carrying it forward to our World Women's Convention and Congress in Liverpool in 2018. The third last slide is contact information for UNI Global Union. If you'd like a copy of that of the paper that's been developed, you can just go to the website and download it. It's in PDF format. And that's also lists there the other social media information for UNI Global Union. And the next slide lists the resources that were used, the research papers that were used that developed the paper that UNI's developed. In closing, I just want you to know, we know this, we are women, we are proud, we are powerful, we are. And together I know you know in this room, that we can do anything, and together we can change everything. And it's important to let's make sure that we're able to do this. And if there's time permitting at the end, we would love to hear your ideas about the future world of work, so that I can bring that back in the report to UNI as part of the development of their next paper. So I want to thank you for your attention and your time, and I'll look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was really informative, especially in the breakdown and the roles that it's impacted on. And we know that it impacts on women in various capacities, but to see it in black and white makes a complete and utter difference. It certainly does. We now have another panellist that's here. Cara, would you like to take a seat just at the side there? Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Kate Russell. Kate is a now youth delegate, and she's a sixth form student at Stroud High School. And Kate is still funded to attend CSW61. Thank you.
Thank you very much to NIWAC for accrediting me, and to the Scottish Women's Convention for allowing me this opportunity. Over 20 years ago, 189 governments signed the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, enabling an agenda for women's rights to be established. This movement not only empowered women from around the world, but gave them the platform allowing their silenced voices to be heard. It is only fitting as technology develops that the momentum is continued and that other avenues are sought to advance women's rights, specifically extending to harder to reach communities where women's rights are perhaps most at risk. Women all over the world are being united by technological advancements. However different may appear, our cultures, our customs and our languages. Digitalisation in a modern world has broken barriers and built bridges, supporting greater education, better health, career advancement and strengthening communities. New channels of opportunity have already been created and are thriving, using data to ensure that gender equality is enforced. By allowing women to connect with each other around the world via technology, women of lower socio-economic backgrounds are not only able to speak, but are also heard. Whilst digitalisation has brought strength and stability, it has also created its own issues. For example, digital inequality has increased in cities such as New Delhi and Manila, where half of men believe that they have the right to control what women looked at online. It has also enabled a window for women who are vulnerable and uneducated to be accessed by groups seeking to exploit them. EU institutions and agencies and bodies, as well as member states and their law enforcement agencies, have had to coordinate their actions to counter the use of information communications technology, enabling crimes such as human trafficking and cyber-related offences, such as harassment, stalking and bullying. As these issues have emerged, criminal law has had to be reviewed. Thus, ensuring that digital-related offences have therefore been defined and clarified to bring about successful prosecutions. New forms of violence against women are taking place with the use of degrading images being placed online and the distribution of social media content, with private photos and videos being exchanged without the person's consent. On occasion, these have had disastrous consequences, resulting in suicide, as was the case for Audrey Pott, a 15-year-old American girl who was sexually assaulted and later traumatized by her peers via the use of social media. The case was publicized and made into a documentary so as to educate and highlight the dangers of social media. Through my own experience, I have encountered how easy it is for someone to harass you, and how the internet facilitates this while affording the perpetrator anonymity. As I did, women may feel helpless and that there's nowhere for them to turn. Thankfully, this growing trend has been recognised, and whilst acts of law have been revised and created so as to bring offenders to justice, support groups have stepped forward once more by creating the initiative to raise awareness online. One such group that raises awareness and that builds online equality and preserves digital freedom of expression for women and girls is Take Back the Tech, initiated by the Association for Progressive Communications Women's Rights Programme. The site has encouraged users to shine a spotlight on a problem, create solidarity, and teach women how to combat it. Since it was launched in 2006, the campaign has been translated into numerous languages and adopted by groups from Bangladesh to Bosnia and beyond. To summarise, digitalisation has enabled women around the world to have a voice. However, it has also enabled criminal groups to exploit them through being stalked, harassed or scammed. Much more needs to be done to ensure that women are empowered but also protected. I implore everyone here to report sexist or offensive comments on social media websites, and to maintain pressure on governments to step in when social networks do not take responsibility for their users, as well as providing education for internet users. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing something that's really personal to you. I'd now like to introduce Cara Brown. Cara is the Scottish Director of the Young Women's Christian Association, the YWCA, and she will talk to us about the world, the work being undertaken on an international level for young women and digitalisation. Thank you, Cara.
Thanks for coming today. I know it's like the end of the first week, so it can be a little bit like, oh, not another event and someone else like reeling off the same statistics and saying the same thing. So thanks for coming, it's really nice. And this is the first Scottish event, is that right, at the UN, which is really exciting. So I was a little bit late, and to make up for it, we've brought some shortbread from Scotland, which, if you've not been or you haven't tasted, it's like a cookie, I guess. It's got butter in it, so Gemma will hand them out at some point. She's going to take photos, but Gemma's with me, she's our digital media officer. I am here to talk today, yes, about digitalisation and the context, the international context, because the worldwide WCA is the biggest women's movement in the world, and we're part of it, so we're one small part of that. And I'm here today with some amazing women from the world movement who've turned up too, which is fab. I wanted to, I guess it's quite nice, it follows on from what you were saying about the dark side, I guess, of digital media and what's happening as we become a more digital world. So I'm going to paint a little bit of a picture about what it's like to be a woman, I guess, in Scotland and in different parts of the world, and what that means when you start to step into new roles that women weren't in before, and how everything is becoming more digital. What's the impact on women? What does that mean in the digital world? So I was looking at some statistics that surprised me, actually. Globally, 200,000 misogynistic tweets were sent over a 2-week period in 2016. And those tweets contained 2 words that were classed as misogynistic, so the word slut and the word whore. 10,000 of those tweets were sent to women in the UK. How many of those tweets, though, were sent by men, and how many of those tweets were sent by people who identify as women, is something that I thought was quite interesting. 50% of the tweets that were sent using that language were sent by women. I find that really interesting because it makes us think that our role, and maybe a subconscious role or something that we don't realise that we're doing, in playing part of this wider society that accepts and perpetuates sexism, both online and offline. In February of this year, Diane Abbott, who's an MP in the UK, spoke out for the first time in over 30 years about the abuse that she received online. She spoke about the fact that she receives both racist and sexist abuse every single day just for being a woman in the public eye. She's not the only one. Lots of women have come forward to say that who work in politics, and I think the digitalisation of the political workplace is really fascinating because we're seeing women step into the spotlight, and they're on Twitter and they're on live webcasts and they're on TV, and there's an opportunity for people to comment and get involved and say things that they might not have felt confident to say before. And what's happening is a huge backlash against women using their voice and speaking out and being in the political eye, in the media eye. There was a survey done around this, around the comments in the time that Diane Abbott spoke out. A third of women MPs have considered quitting their job and leaving politics based on the abuse that they've experienced online. And more than half of the threats that they faced and the things that they were sent were physical. Some of them were even death threats. It's easy to sit here, I guess, as a white privileged woman and not acknowledge the fact that it's much more difficult for certain types of women. And I think that it's important that I say that. Diane Abbott, I use her as an example because she's one of 20 women of colour in the Parliament in the UK, and in Scotland we have none. So all of the MSPs who are women in Scotland are white. I think it's easy to dismiss the impact that some of these smaller microaggressions have on the lives of women on inequality. So don't underestimate the power of that, but also don't underestimate the power of microfeminism, which is a way of using small little gestures and small things that we do that build up to be something much bigger. And if microaggressions can build up into something more sinister, so can our microfeminist actions. I say this because last year, Jo Cox, who's a woman MP in the UK, she was killed, she was shot and stabbed in the street. She was 41 years old. And I do join the dots and I do connect the fact that she's a figure in the public eye, speaking out. She was very vocal about equality and about feminism and about refugee rights. And it was a terrible thing that happened, and it really made people think about safety and what it means to be a woman in the public eye, and I guess also the digitalisation around women's work. there's another example quite recently, just last week. Jack Monroe, who's a non-binary activist in the UK, won a court case around abuse that they had received online. In the court case itself, they presented 6 ring binder folders of abusive language that had been sent to them on Twitter. So just from the result of one little conversation they'd ended up with a whole load of abuse over a period of time that had resulted in a lot of stress and mental health difficulties and a breakdown of a relationship. In 2015, we started a new piece of research in Scotland, and we did it in a digital way. So I wanted to talk about that because I think it was quite interesting. We wanted to learn more about some of these things that are going on and how it feels to be a woman in this context and with everything that's happening right now and we're hearing about. We invited women from across Scotland of all different ages to send us an example of a time that they felt they were treated differently based on their gender. We call it a gender light bulb moment. And they submitted these experiences of everyday sexism to us via a blog online. And we used that to then create themes for this project. And we went out across Scotland, and over the past 2 years we've spoken to over 170 young women aged under 30 about their experiences of being a woman today in Scotland. I wanted to share some of their voices with you because I think it's really important that I do that in my position, and it's not just me that you hear from. So a couple of the things that are relevant to this conversation are about young women's experiences of being in the digital world. The first is around public shaming and abuse. You'd have your webcam and there would be boys at my school who'd be like, "Go and flash us." We'd be like, "No." You'd be all cutesy on the webcam and they'd be like, "Show us your tits." And then you'd be like, "No, go away." There's a lot of pressure on girls to do that kind of stuff and they don't really want to. There was one time I got this comment and it basically ended up him saying, "Black girls are always up for it though, aren't they?" And that was enough for me. I think that's a hard thing to learn, that men have this perception of you based on the colour of your skin. And that was really difficult to get my head around, especially that sexual perception that you might be kind of filling a fantasy or they're expecting something from you that they wouldn't expect from other women because of what they perceive your body to be like because you're a black woman. I think that was difficult. And then the slightly more positive voice. Social media is good now. There's a lot of YouTubers, people writing about being gay, being bi or trans or whatever. If there are teenagers now feeling that way, they can't rely on that one lesbian in the town and be like, "Oh God, I have to be like that." There's a broad range of people you can look at or idolise and take a bit from that person and that person. Also, there's the videos that a lot of people are making so your parents can watch it instead of asking 10 questions I always get asked as a trans woman. We use social media at the Young Women's Movement as a way to counteract microaggressions and misogyny. It's horrible if you've experienced it and you've heard someone talking about that today, that the anxiety that you can get just from feeling something negative that someone sent you online. But I guess we imagine what it feels like if you built up all of those positive messages and you were encouraging and supportive towards other women online. It's not just about feeling good and safe, however. It's about us taking responsibility for the part that we play in this sexist culture and that we really are all a part of. There's a couple of campaigns recently that have inspired me. There's one by Engender, that's an organisation in Scotland called Make Work Visible, and it's all about promoting what women do in the workplace and maybe reducing stereotypes around the type of work that women do. There's another one called Reclaim the Internet. It's a really interesting cross-party campaign in the UK around reclaiming that space online and making it safe and positive again. And another example of new media being used to solve the problem is an international one, which I was asked to speak about. We started a new campaign here at CSW called #YoungWomenRise, and different young women across the world movement and also all sorts of people have got engaged this week, and we'd like to continue it. And the idea is to take a photograph. You're to write "rise" on your hand, and then you take a photograph in any position that you want. Some people have made fists, made high fives, and put their hands up. And it's about encouraging young women to rise in their workplace and the world that they're in. And it can be as simple as encouraging a young woman to sit on your board, or passing the mic to a young woman if you're speaking at an event. It's that kind of concept. How can you make a change in your workplace to make young women rise up and change the culture that we live in? By encouraging young women to take up space, and rise, we can break down the patriarchal structures and transform the white, cisgender, male-dominated spaces where decisions are made, and that ultimately contribute to this wider culture that accepts, allows and feels gender equality. So I have a little question for you to end on, and then I want to make sure you definitely get shortbread, and if you want reports, I've got a report. How many of you, raise your hand, have sent a positive, encouraging message on social media to another woman? Oh yeah, this is a good room. I asked this the other day somewhere and it was like, okay, so I'd just like to say then that you are a micro-feminist warrior, and continue to do that. Continue to flood the internet with positivity. We can't get rid of all of the crap that's out there and all the negative things that are happening, but we can fill that space with positive, feminist, encouraging sisterhood. So yeah, I'd encourage you to do that.
Thank you for that presentation. I was actually quite surprised to see it was 50-50 on the abuse. That was, you think in this day and age women would empower other women. You just don't think that 50% would say no. Just the hashtag again, hashtag Young Women Rise.
Young Women Rise, yes.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alison Fraser. Just so you know, the Scottish Women Convention sponsor a Young Women's Achievement Award, and that's done every year. And Alison, we are happy to see, was the initiating winner of that Young Achiever Award, and she's here today. Alison.
Hi everyone, as Sarah said, my name is Alison and I'm a volunteer with the Scottish Women's Convention and have been for about the past 10 years. They got me at a young age. I was 12 when they first got me to do stuff for them. So the Scottish Women's Convention has spoken to women throughout Scotland and has produced a report on women's economic empowerment and the changing world of work, and there's some just up the back there if any of you would want one. Women have spoken about employment practices as well as their role within the workplace. Discussions have focused on the lack of flexibility, the role of women as carers and pregnancy and paternal leave. A lot of conversations looked at the perceptions other women have in the workplace today. The Scottish Women's Convention also produced this booklet here, which looks at the how women are perceived in the media and how violent images are put across and every day, and you might not realise it through song lyrics, through music videos and just through like memes and stuff that you see on Facebook. Although it was produced in relation to sexualisation of women, it can also relate to women within the workplace. How women look, act and dress are all reported in all aspects of media. There is a culture of looking perfect and having the perfect lifestyle, which, let's be honest, none of us have and none of us ever will have. This is not always possible for women juggling work and childcare. These media stories result in women losing confidence in their abilities, disempowering them and having negative impacts on their ability to succeed and be recognised within the workplace. We must all work together to challenge these stereotypes and ensure that women reach their potential in the world of work as well as all aspects of society. Thank you.
Alison, thank you for that. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Debbie Figgers. Debbie is here representing Unite the Union Women's Committee in Scotland. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming along on a Friday night. I know how draining this week has been because I've been there with you, standing in rooms packed to the gunnels, so yeah, I'm so happy that you've managed to come along. Following on nicely from Cara, actually, I was just sitting thinking while we were discussing everything about what my first initiation into a union was when I was very young and very gullible, because I seem to still be there. I was told when I joined Unite's committees that you don't want to go near the Women's Committee. They don't do anything. They don't get anything done. And I found that quite funny. The first couple of years I listened to the men who I thought would know better. And actually it wasn't until my third year when the elections came back up that I decided, no, I'm going to make this Women's Committee active. I want to do something. And the first comment I got from one of my supporting brothers was that you'll need to make sure you buy your steel toe caps, and see when you cut your hair short, we know that they've definitely got to you. And when the red lipstick was on, that's it, you're no turning back. So I remember that was the initial that I got. Now I get it online. I get supportive brothers and sometimes sisters who, if we decide to stand up for a cause and you don't agree with, you're the one that gets it for sharing those actions. So to be a young woman is not easy. It's not an easy world with the digitalisation. So I'm here to discuss the impact that digitalisation has had in the UK. And Unite is one of the largest trade unions around. It's the largest one in the UK. We represent people in the UK, Ireland and in Gibraltar. We've got over 1.4 million members. It's what you call a lay-led trade union, which means that the actual committees within Unite control what the union is doing. It's not controlled by the people that are staffing the union, it is controlled by the members themselves. So we have a committee structure where we have different committees. We have qualities committees, and I am chair of the Women's Committee in Scotland. It's primarily an industry-based union, which means that we're able to represent members from nearly every single sector. We managed to split the union into different regions. So we have the Scottish region, the Irish region, the Welsh region, and each region there's a regional secretary, and that regional secretary oversees the staffing and the officers. And can I tell you, there's not been a women one yet. So we're still sitting with an all-male-led trade union. So hopefully that'll change soon, if any of our women want to come forward. There's members are able to get as active as they can within the union, and we encourage women to come forward, to come into our Women's Committee and really make a change for gender equality. We also have a community membership scheme now, which has got unemployed members getting involved. We organise them within their communities, empower them to make a change for their community. So if you've got a group closing down within the community, they start to organise that section of the community and get them organised and make sure that they campaign to keep their places open. So let's discuss digitalisation now that I've described Unite. Unite the Union has carried out extensive research. It's been one of the things we've concentrated on for the last couple of years. As we've seen that spike that Pearl talked about, it was like a 90-degree angle in the last 10 years. It was going steadily and technology took over. So about 35% of UK jobs could be lost to various forms of automation by 2035. So if you think about that, 35% of Unite's 1.4 million membership is 490,000 jobs that will be lost due to technology and digitalisation. As of this month, the UK has 31.85 million people in work. So automation could cause 9.1 million of those people in the UK to lose their jobs by 2035. It's completely staggering. Worst news is, 2/3 of the job totals are actually women. So the women are making up 2/3 of that loss of jobs from the technology and digitalisation and automation. Unite has more than 650,000 members in sectors that are deemed to be high risk. So I'm going to go round through each sector and see if I see any nodding heads as to what you think has been going on in each sector. So there's 11 different sectors that have been marked as high risk. So firstly, I probably don't need to tell you any more, is automotive, which is the car industry. And Unite has researched the impact of digitalisation in this workforce, and it has been decimated. Robots build your cars. You're lucky if a human even checks them. So this sector already was in crisis due to developments in countries like Japan and Germany, where their technology in their cars had exceeded by far the UK's technology. So therefore our automotive industry was already in a decline anyway, but now robots have taken over. The next one is passenger transport. So in the UK we have a very, I would say it's a pretty good passenger transport system. I'm sure Carol would back me up on this one. Our trains run quite well, our buses run even better. So this one affects everyone if you use passenger transport, getting to your work, undergrounds, everything. So you can't get on the underground without a smart card or a smart pass, and these mostly come out of machinery. You get 2 people on desks now, whereas I remember years ago there was 6 or 7 desks open. It's definitely not improving my journey as a consumer, can I say, because you've lost the personal touch for beginning. You come in and you're talking to a machine in the morning, and I actually find myself thanking the machine for my ticket in the morning. As you're not awake, you don't know what you're doing, and the machine gave me a ticket, so thank you. We're losing drivers due to the fact that the underground may go driverless. So Glasgow's underground is looking to be controlled by computers. There's going to be no drivers on our underground trains. We are losing ticket office, we're losing conductors, and that's on both buses, trains and the underground. So basically your ticket's scanned by a machine, you travel on a machine that is controlled by a robot, and you will scan your ticket to get back out of the place. So what happened to the jobs? The jobs have gone. It's making those big travel companies a lot of money, as they don't have to pay the staff any wages anymore. They've got machines to do it for us. So instead of having 5 or 10 people checking tickets, you've now got one machine that lets you through. The next one's food and drink and agriculture. Most assembly lines now for your food and drink are all carried out by robotics. Even the picking of the fruit and vegetables are carried out by some form of machinery. There is hardly any people now actually out picking or dealing with your fresh fruit. You can actually even 3D print food now these days, and Pearl was talking about 3D print a house, but you can 3D print food by using the pulp that has been left over by something else and 3D printing it into something that's edible. You even have computers and machinery designing cakes. We have machines that can take the icing on a cake and design it by a computer design, and each cake gets turned out in the exact same way. So you've even lost jobs to that form in that industry. One of the ones that's hit us quite a bit is the chemicals, pharmaceuticals process and the textiles. The UK was always renowned for its textiles, and now we have one machine taking 5 times less in time to the people that used to manually sew and manually manufacture these textiles. We now have machines that can actually pick things up, put it into sewing machines, pick them out, put it through, finish a bit of knitting, and there you go, there's your jumper. You don't even need a human to deal with that. And as we all know, women were renowned for working in textiles, especially in the UK. It was one of the big bases for women. We have the metal industry, which is also under threat. There is plants closing anyway in the UK due to technological problems. We can't keep up with other countries. But we also now have plants that have machinery manufacturing the metals themselves. So that is also taking away jobs. It's quite depressing, isn't it? It's starting to get quite. Luckily, I go on to something a wee bit more positive. So, how about health? We've got hospitals, and we've got a new super hospital in the UK and Scotland, and we have robots that greet you at the door. We have robots that serve you tea and coffee. We have not much to do really for us as staffing. So as goes, nurses and doctors even have to input your information into a computer these days. We have no paper records following us about. The finance and legal sector's been affected by it as well. We've got telecommunications, which used to be a massive sector, the call centre business as well. They used to take calls, but now you've got to go through the 1, 2, 3 process, where a computer decides if they've got the answer to your question first before you're passed on to a woman at the other end of the line. We have also the fact that banking is been closing down the branches. We've got a lot of small branches in your local areas being closed down, and it's been changed onto online banking and telephone banking. We've got local authorities being actually affected, which is our version of like city, your cities here, and the way they manage things. So your mayor shut the city down the other day. Our person that would have done that is our local authority. Each city's got a local authority. And actually housing advice and benefits advice and things like that are actually being looked to be online now. If you can't work a computer, it's very, very hard for you to get the help that you need anymore, as the citizens advice areas have been shut down. So I've got another couple as well. We've got the GEMS area, which is the engineering, and Pearl covered most of that.
and also the servicing industry, where apparel cover detills your man. When you go into a shop, you don't even get a person to talk to anymore, and that was the one interaction that a lot of people had throughout the day, was that one person that they bought their bread and milk from in the morning. Now they've got beep and out. So the scary thing is the majority of these jobs used to be taken on by women. We also need to be aware that even the loss of jobs to men affect women, as we are wives, girlfriends, daughters of the men that are losing their jobs. It's clear the union has to develop an effective response to what's clear and a clearly significant threat to the jobs and potentially the future of work. We've managed to organise ourselves politically and industrially, and the best way that we've found to do it is by creating strike funds for each sector to make sure that they've got a strike fund ready for when they decide to take some action against employers that are trying to make them lose their job. We also have basically used technology and social media to network our members and organise our members into forms of action that they can take to help each other, and also to build global structures with like our sisters and brothers in Uni Global. So we need to be on the ball. It's going to accelerate. It's only going to get steeper as we go forward, and let's discuss some positives. The Scottish Union Learning, which is a section of the Scottish Union Trades Congress, which is a group of unions that have joined together to help each other with what they've got going forward. They've been actually taking courses in the UK, helping people to upskill and re-empower themselves into getting a steadier job or a different job or progressing within their company. We want women to break that glass ceiling. We want women to be able to take on something that they never had before. So they may all be taking a digitalisation course on something as simple as how to turn a computer on, because a lot of women didn't know how to work a computer, and this is the way forward for their lives. But we also are teaching them how to code. So that is taking them as far as being able to design websites, to design your work with social media in the background, help design apps for your phone. So the unions are actually in the UK trying to empower women by helping them to retrain in these areas, especially the STEM careers that Perrin was talking about. We're trying basically to empower women to take on engineering roles. The Scottish Trade Union Congress has even launched a Union into Schools sort of project, which takes the unions into the schools. We educate the students in the schools on what unions do and how unions help you in a workplace, and try to encourage them to understand that when they join the world of work, that the way forward is to hopefully join a trade union, become organised and help yourself to have that protection. So in sum up, because I know Sarah will start pinching me in a minute, we need to educate, we need to organise, and we need to fight against the trend that is digitalisation. We need to unionise women workers, and we need to use collective bargaining and discussions to prove that we are needed, we are women, and we are important. Thank you.
Fantastic points within the trade union movement. Okay, we're now looking to move on to a question and answer session, and before we do that, just to say that prior to coming to CSW61, the Scottish Women's Convention held our International Women's Day event in the Scottish Parliament on March the 4th, and as part of that we were fortunate enough to have a cocoa farmer from Ghana called Linda, and the cocoa farmers there make a chocolate called Divine Chocolate, and we have some here and some there which we'll look to hand out later at the end of the session. Linda spoke to the delegate about her organisation, about the chocolates, and Linda's involved with Kurapa Koku. Okay, so we'll look to probably look for about 5-10 minutes of Q&A. So we'll take a few questions, maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll respond and then the answers. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Hi there, my name's Simone. I'm from the YWCA in Australia, New Zealand. We've recently had a few cases in the media of young men saying horrible comments about young women online. And I was just wondering, do you think that this is like a culture thing that's been happening for a while, or having an online forum has maybe made it, or has it made it more obvious that it's online rather than just chat? Or is it happening more because it's online? If that makes sense.
If we take maybe 2 or 3 questions and then we can ask the panel. Any more questions?
This kind of goes on from Simone's point, which is kind of Zulika, and it was just about the kind of nature of abuse and the fact that a lot of young women especially experience abuse online. And I was wondering if you think that is more about guys thinking that women are easier targets and that they won't get kind of a response and repercussions to that, or do you think it's about kind of the nature of abuse? Like you were talking about words like slut and all this stuff, and like those bitch and other words that are specifically misogynistic, whereas words that are used to kind of insult men are often less degrading in a way. And I was wondering if you think that why the abuse is kind of, the nature of the abuse is the way it is.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions? Sorry, yes, can you state your name, please?
My name is Eileen Kokoski. I'm from Boston, part of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. I read about a year or 2 ago that the Industrial Revolution and the concept of it originally started around Turkey, as we know it now. They found no use for it. They literally felt it would impede on their lifestyle, their spiritualism. However, people from Europe, particularly the colonials, grasped onto it and went whole hog and got us in this mess we call global warming. That's, of course, my take on it. Do we have a choice? I think we do. We're the purchasers of things. Do we really have to have all this stuff? I've been spoiled rotten, and I'm trying to downsize now. Of course, I'm at that age I would downsize anyway. And I'm trying to convince the kids in my life they don't need 8 million toys. Pick some good ones, give some away, and just, anyway. I think it's time to change our lifestyle and remember what we're really about. We're human beings. We don't have to be semi-robots. Italy fought and got 8-hour days and 8 weeks of vacation. Why can't we? Why do we have to work 24/7, it seems? I know I worked like a dog when I was on before retirement. Why don't we take the quality of our life back? Do you think we can do this, though? Yeah, that's the question.
Karen, I think the first 2 questions were probably more directed at you.
Yeah, I'll try and answer with a bit of wisdom if you want to say something about that. Simone's question was, is there more, were those conversations happening before, or are they happening now? They weren't happening, were they happening before, or are there more conversations now like that and abuse and like, okay. I think this is something that's always existed, so I feel like over time, the way that women are spoken about and are treated and actually silenced, I think the key is silence to both of your questions, has always been around. It just evolves with the way that the world is. So I feel like I'm part of an organisation that's over 160 years old, as are you, Simone. And I think we've seen over that time, like, there's a need for us to exist, and we create safe spaces for women and girls to come together because it's needed. So I feel like it's always been an issue, and that it's not always been safe, I guess, and easy for women to speak out. And I do think it's to do with voice, because what we've seen, and I went to this really interesting talk, something that you should look up actually, by a woman who heads up PEN International, and she heads up PEN in a certain country, I can't remember, I think it's somewhere in South Africa, and she was talking about the grammar of violence, and it's really interesting because it's the way that men in particular speak online at young women and women. And I find that fascinating. There's a lot of the time men talk about strangling or talk about in this area on a woman, and the language that's used is to shut women up. It's all of that very kind of connecting the physical to the way that we can abuse people by speech as well. So I'd recommend looking that up, the grammar of violence. I think that yes, it's always been around. It's probably made much worse and perpetuated by the internet, because you know, like, I feel like there's almost that solidarity that you can say something and there's other people out there who can see it, and there's an anonymity to it because you can sit and say something from your phone or from your computer, and no one's really going to call you out for that. And that's something that you were talking about, which is so important, is we absolutely have to get people to take it seriously. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I can't remember exactly what else you asked now.
I was just asking about the kind of, I didn't phrase it very clearly actually, but I was sort of asking about whether you think that, obviously it seems like abuse online is in some ways a bigger issue for women, that it is a gendered issue, and whether you think that's because of the kind of abuse that already exists, the kind of insults that already exist around women, or whether it's because of the way that society sees women as easy to insult and, like as you're saying, people to be shut up.
Yeah, I think it's very much a part of the bigger picture. So it is that, unfortunately, we're still at a point where when women speak out in particular and are visible, and whether it's online or offline, we are a target in many ways. And sadly, I mean, based on that study that I looked at, even though it is sometimes women making those comments and being negative and abusive towards other women, it still seems to be women that are the target group. So yeah, I think that it is really interesting. I'm fascinated in why that is, but I think it's part of a bigger cycle of abuse. And something that's really exciting is coming up in Scotland is the laws changed around domestic abuse, and we now include a pattern and a cycle of abuse in our legislation. So that's something that's being discussed in Scottish Parliament and is passed and is coming up. And it's really, I recommend looking at that as well, because it's accepting that abuse is not limited to physical abuse, and it can also be mental and financial abuse, and it's part of this pattern of violence that we see. And I think that this is part of that. So it's great that it's being taken seriously, and that online abuse needs to be part of that too.
Thank you. I think that covers all.
I'd just like to add as well, at uni, they've started a program 2 or 3 years ago, Are You Man Enough? So, Simone, when you talked about men making comments online, and what you also talked about as well, I think it's important that we start to educate young men to also get online and take a different position and actually challenge some of the comments that are being made. You know, as long as those comments don't get challenged, we're left in a weakened position. And really what they're finding, and a course I took last year, is that in society, if men are the group that are targeting women, if other men don't speak up, it leaves us in a very vulnerable position. So really we need to educate the men out there, our sons, our husbands, and fathers, about the importance that when they are online and they see abuse against women, that they need to speak up and stand up for women. Recently, just on Facebook, I saw around International Women's Day, there was a video of young men, students in a school, who spoke about feminism, and what they were doing was they had asked their mothers about what makes you a feminist, I think was the question. And they talked about, they told their mothers stories. And that was really neat to see that. That's good. So it's really, I think there are things that we can do to help change that conversation, because if we're not engaging in the conversation remains as it is. So really, we need to educate our men and those that identify as men to stand up and counter the negativity that's out there. And I think that also helps to show others that they're not going to get away with it, because right now they're getting away with it in a lot of forms.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Just to go into the final question, because we literally have minutes left here. It's about your question around the quality of life and how do we take that back. If we leave that maybe a quick Pearl and the trade union ventures, if you, Pearl and
me. Well, the way we take it back, I feel that what I try best to do is not to use the machinery and the automation. To be honest, if there's somebody sitting at a ticket desk or somebody there, go to them, use the checkout operator. Don't use the machinery. That's the way to empower yourself, because the only way that the actual big massive companies are going to understand it is when people don't use the machinery they put in place, and they will queue, and they will queue up the lines until somebody actually takes them at a desk. And I feel that's one of the actions that we probably could to empower ourselves. And I fully agree with you. I think we've become very consumer related, and we feel that the need for stuff is more important than the need for each other. And I think that also leads on to the abuse and things that go online. And I think the world itself needs to change the way they think about people. And to be honest, I always say that the whole thing about online abuse is that the men are scared. The men are scared that the women have found a voice, and the only way they can shut women down is to abuse them for it. And other women should never be doing that, and I think we need to highlight that. We need to make sure that our sisters understand that you support a woman no matter what, and you try your best.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, we have 2 minutes.
Okay, just very quickly, some of the things that we're seeing around technology and what we call fast fashion, where product comes in to a shop or online today, and 2 days later it's on sale, and 10 days later there's a whole new shipment in of new product. And there's a whole system out there in retail that's just encouraging people to purchase. And what we're not looking at, and I am as I'm aging, I'm actually in the declutter mode. I was in the consumerism mode, I'm now in the declutter mode. But I think it's really important that we talk about the environmental footprint that takes up when we're purchasing all kinds of excessive things that we really don't need, 50 pairs of shoes or X number of pieces of clothing, that when we look at the actual cost to the environment on that, I think that may be something that will help connect with consumers over time. That you don't need to purchase all these things and have like a wardrobe full of endless pieces of clothing. So I think the environmental footprint is really critical, and making that connection about the excessiveness of consumerism. And we as women, we can control that, like you heard the stats earlier. Yeah. I would just, one little point, there's no time right now to talk about ideas, but if you have ideas and solutions for women, I would ask that you go onto the Facebook page of the Scottish Women's Convention and make some comments, and I will then go on and capture those and take them back to uni.
That's so cute.
All CSW meeting rooms. All meeting rooms should be ending in 4 minutes. All meeting rooms should be ending in 4 minutes.
I'm just going to speak for 4 minutes. 4 minutes to speak.
Laptops, gloves, umbrellas.
It's a man taking control again. It's a computer. It's digitalised.
Everything with. Once again, all meetings should be ending in 4 minutes. It's just a reminder. Thank you very much. And everybody, please get home safe.
Thank you. That was lovely.
Thank you very much.
Okay, 3 minutes, stop talking. Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance at our event tonight. I'd like to thank all the speakers for the fantastic contributions, the very interesting contributions, and I'd like you to take these bags away with our thank you. Attendees, you will find bags on your desk. Take it with our best wishes. Thank you. Help yourself to chocolate. We would